life in prison, life in prison. What do you think about that?
Well, that's going to save a lot of women.
Jassy was not in the wrong place at the right time. She was right where every woman has every right to be, celebrating her birthday on a night out with friends. It's a problem that men take responsibility for in their lives, in their sons' lives, and in the social lives with friends and colleagues.
When Louis Coleman was seen outside his apartment complex, dragging a heavy suitcase, investigators feared the worst. 23-year-old Jassy Correia had been missing for days, and she had last been seen walking away from a nightclub with Coleman. What the detectives discovered would leave an entire community in tears, disgusted, and demanding justice for Jassy. Jassy Correia's tragic story also opened a discussion about gender-based violence and hope for women's safety around the world.
The mayor couldn't have said it any better. He said that no individual, no woman shouldn't be able to celebrate their birthday and have to worry about anything.
Yeah, Jassy lost her life on her birthday. Her case is heartbreaking from top to bottom. Let us explore her life and death as a way to honor her and hope that no other woman will have to suffer the end she did that fateful day in 2019. It was February 23, 2019, in Boston, and Jassy Correia was celebrating her 23rd birthday. She'd had some pretty rough years and wanted to reward herself for making it through. Jassy had a toddler daughter, Gabriela, and she loved her more than anything. But her baby daddy, Miguel Castro, was problematic, to say the least. He was the possessive type. Their relationship went, within a few years, from passionate love to verbal jealousy and violence. When Jassy decided to leave, Miguel wouldn't let her. Y'all, it might take two to tango, but it only takes one to leave a relationship. However, Miguel was in denial of this, and in his demented headspace, Jassy was his. So he subjected her to horrific violence as punishment for her desire to get away from his violence in the first place. Eventually, Jassy decided she had to protect herself and her daughter at all costs. Encouraged by her father and brother, she went to the authorities and reported Miguel's DV. He was arrested, charged, and sentenced to 4 years behind bars. Just a year later, when Jassy finally felt safe, her life was taken in the most brutal way imaginable. On the night of Saturday, February 23, 2019, Jassy headed home after her work shift at the Del Frisco's restaurant. She took Gabriela to the park. Then, she took her to one of her relatives for the night. Finally, she dressed up for a party in an orange jumpsuit and headed out to a club called Venue. There, she met a couple of friends who wished her a happy birthday and ordered a big bottle of champagne to celebrate her. They danced into the early hours of Sunday, and when the nightclub closed its doors, they decided to call it a night and head home. Jassy and 2 of her friends hugged each other and said goodbye. Mere seconds later, Jassy would vanish, and no one would hear from her ever again. She was taken from this world without the chance to say goodbye to Gabriela, her brother, or her father. On Sunday, February 24th, everyone was worried about Jassy. She was supposed to come home and pick her daughter up from her family. She was a devoted mom, not a party-addicted teen who would forget to come home or send a text if she was late. Her father and brother immediately started calling her and sending her texts. Her calls went straight to voicemail. Worried, they contacted her friends, who had seen her last night at the party, but they hadn't heard from Jassy either. After they said goodbye, everyone went their own way, and they thought Jassy had made it home just like they had. On February 26th, Jassy's dad, Joaquin, took one of Jassy's friends and went to the authorities to report Jassy missing. Jassy's friend also stated that she knew for certain that Jassy was headed home when they said goodbye that night. This meant that Jassy had been taken against her will. It was a kidnapping case. Flyers were posted all around Boston with Jassy's description and the last place she was seen. And the detectives urged the general public to ring with any clues they might have seen or heard. but it was the club's CCTV footage that would prove the most useful in the investigation. At 2:14 a.m., surveillance footage outside the Venue nightclub captured Jassy saying goodbye to her friends. Shortly after, footage shows Jassy getting into an Uber by herself. Sadly, this was not the Uber she ordered. But as she was tired and slightly intoxicated, she did not check the license plate. She assumed the driver had recognized her from the app, so she just got in. The Uber driver was enraged that this random drunk person was in his car, and he yelled at her to get out. A few seconds later, he is seen pushing Jassy out of the car into a crowd of passers-by. Jassy continued to cuss at the driver for being aggressive with her, and the driver wouldn't leave either. He just sat there, parked, and cursed Jassy. Meanwhile, a good Samaritan seems to appear. He takes Jassy's hand and tries to defuse the situation. He also offers to take her home if the Uber driver won't. Surveillance footage shows the two talking for a few seconds, but Jassy looks distressed and wants to let go of his hand. But he doesn't let go. This camera captured Jassy going away with this man. Another camera captured the man walking and carrying Jassy on his back. It's likely Jassy fully trusted this person to get her home safely, as she felt she was too drunk to order another Uber. Or maybe she couldn't resist his insistent advances because of her state, and at this point, she had no choice but to go with him. Another security camera shows the two getting into the man's car, and only 14 minutes later does the car take off. Due to the many cameras around the Venue Club, authorities were able to piece together the timeline of events and identify the suspect, 32-year-old Louis Coleman. While the detectives were looking for Coleman, they also did a quick background search on him. In cases like this, detectives expect to find men with long criminal records, with perhaps DV and violent crimes at the top. But Louis Coleman was nothing of the type. He had a master's degree in physics, no criminal record, and as far as authorities' records showed, no car. So whose red car was he driving that night? When detectives researched his family, they discovered that Louis's mother owned a red 2016 Buick. However, she lived in California, and she had left the car with her son. Louis lived in Providence, Rhode Island. Yep, another state, south of Massachusetts. As soon as they tracked his address, authorities sent local officers to his home with a warrant for his arrest. CCTV footage caught the moment officers arrived at his door. Louis wasn't there, but a camera was. So the officers retrieved it and checked the timeline for Sunday, February 24th. It turns out that Louis arrived with Jassy at his home at around 4:15 a.m. Since the drive from the Venue Club was about 1 hour long, the detectives surmised he'd stopped somewhere on the way. The detectives also discovered Louis was working as a sensors sand processing systems engineer at a large company. On Monday, he emailed everyone to take a few sick days. "Hi all, just giving everyone a heads up that I'm still out sick. I'll be back in a few days. Best, Louis." This was not looking good for Louis. He was busy disposing of evidence. His apartment's surveillance footage also painted a grim picture. An FBI agent described the unreleased footage from 4:15 a.m. that Sunday. A short time later, Coleman walked from the red sedan towards the front of the building, carrying a body with long hair and orange pants. I believe that this footage shows Coleman carrying the victim into his apartment building. And there was more incriminating CCTV footage from a store on February 26. Louis Coleman was seen buying 3 protection suits, duct tape, 2 candles, electrical tape, a mask and gloves, safety goggles, an odor respirator, and CLN release bleach bath. That might be the creepiest shopping list out there. And on the following day, Wednesday, Louis was caught again at Walmart with a cart carrying a suitcase and a large canister. At 9:58 p.m. that day, Coleman was seen entering his apartment with the suitcase. The following day, at 2:15 a.m., he left with the suitcase from his 6th-floor apartment, took the elevator downstairs, and wheeled it to his car. Does his suitcase appear a little heavier now than before? Yeah, what you think was inside the suitcase was inside the suitcase. Throughout that entire night, Louis was in and out of his apartment building, carrying all sorts of objects: trash bags, boxes, a bottle of bleach, a laptop case, and a duffel bag. On February 28th, authorities turned up at Coleman's apartment with a search warrant. He wasn't there, but what they found inside his home spoke volumes. Hooded coveralls, respirator masks, and other signs of foul play were scattered all over his apartment. The forensic team also retrieved a sofa cushion, missing its cover. They also found half of Louis's possessions in the dumpster outside the complex. In the dumpsters were clothes with bleach on them, cleaning equipment, stained safety goggles, duct tape, rubbing alcohol, used plastic gloves, and a huge amount of air fresheners, among other things. The full horror of what Louis had done was finally unraveling. Louis Coleman had to be found fast if Jassy's remains were to be saved.
Tonight, we're getting a look at never-before-seen video evidence presented in the case against Louis Coleman.
He's the Providence man accused of kidnapping and killing Jassy Correia in 2019. The videos played by federal prosecutors in court today show the moments Coleman was arrested and placed in the back of a patrol car.
Louis Coleman was tracked down to a Delaware road, attempting to flee his home state as well as Massachusetts. He was arrested at the very end of February 2019. According to some reports, the deputies asked Louis if anybody else was in the car with him, to which he replied, "She's in the trunk." Authorities already knew what they were looking for. No one was looking forward to opening that trunk. It was a team effort. It was both a relief and a moment of sheer horror when the officers found the suitcase in Louis Coleman's trunk. Inside the suitcase was a trash bag, and inside the trash bag was the missing cushion cover. Stuffed in the cover was Jassy, decomposed and in an abnormal position. It was a scarring sight even for the most seasoned detectives. Louis Coleman was handcuffed and charged with first-degree murder. His car was also taken in as evidence and examined by a specialized team. First and foremost, there were 2 cracks on his windshield. The team concluded that Louis took Jassy's life inside his car during those 14 minutes that they were parked, or during their hour-long break on their way to Louis' apartment. Louis was initially taken to a Delaware State Police barracks. There, his mugshot was taken and his body was analyzed for potential injuries. There it was, a scrape on the right side of his face. Louis didn't even make up a kooky story about it, like many killers do. When an officer asked him how he got that, he simply stated, "It's from the girl." That's who Jassy was to him, a girl. An easy prey for him to toy with in the most horrible way imaginable. She wasn't a person or a mother or a daughter, but an object of his worst desires. To hundreds of others, Jassy was so much more.
Tonight, an emotional farewell to a young mother found dead after she was kidnapped. Nearly 2 weeks after Jassy Correia went out to celebrate her birthday, she was laid to rest.
Pain, sorrow, loss, cries for mercy could be heard on the streets of Dorchester as hundreds came to say goodbye to Jassy Correia, a young mother whose life was cut short.
Jassy's loved ones were there, but the entire community of Dorchester, where she and Gabriella lived, was there too.
I came because I'm a mother myself. It was it's so sad.
Jassy's funeral was held at St. Peter Parish, and dozens of people shed tears. They felt for a person who deserved so much more, and who gave nothing but love and kindness to those around her. It's shocking to read or hear about such incidents, let alone know they happened to someone you knew. For a moment, the world doesn't feel safe or right anymore. People wanted justice for Jassy. They wanted Louis Coleman to hang.
The fact that this went down on her birthday, I'm just totally disgusted. Oh, that baby ain't never gonna have a mom again.
Gabriella was only 2 years old when her mother lost her life. With her dad in prison for DV against her mom, it's hard to imagine how she will have a normal, happy childhood. She is under the care of her maternal grandfather now. But will they ever be able to move on from what happened to Jassy? The community also revolted against the seemingly never-ending problem of gender-based violence and lack of safety for women everywhere around the world.
He couldn't have said it any better. He said that no individual, no woman shouldn't be able to celebrate their birthday and have to worry about anything. And I tell you, it was a very sad funeral.
This is what Boston Mayor Marty Walsh said. Young women deserve to go out at night and celebrate their birthdays with their friends. And they deserve to come back home afterward to their children and their families. No family should ever go through what Jassy's family had endured. Heartbreakingly, there were people commenting on the internet that Jassy shouldn't have been by herself on the streets at that time of night. Yeah, blame the victim, why don't you? Saying things like this only normalizes violence against women and the idea that women are responsible for getting preyed on by abusive men. District Attorney Rachel Rollins expressed her opinion on this issue.
Jassy was not in the wrong place at the right time. She was right where every woman has every right to be, celebrating her birthday on a night out with friends. Let's not fall into a discussion about whether we should walk home alone or how many people we should call when we're leaving the club. If anything, let's remind the men in our lives that violence against women isn't a woman's issue. It's a problem that men take responsibility for in their lives, in their sons' lives, and in the social lives with friends and colleagues.
Exactly. It's not on women to escape men. It's on men to not be murdered. As her family brought her casket out of the church, Jassy's favorite music was played, and her loved ones were seen in an emotional group hug. Jassy's cousin Michaela said, "As a family, as friends, as a community, we express our sadness, but we must also accept the death of Jassy. We do not know, but God knows, and I have faith and trust in God with all my heart that her death was not in vain." Jassy and her family were originally from Capo Verde. Her dad moved to the United States with her and her brother when they were still toddlers, and her mom moved to Portugal. Jassy's mom had not seen her for 2 decades when she attended her funeral. She was devastated. She hadn't had the chance to reconnect with her and say goodbye. She will forever live with that regret. Jassy's dad also spoke at her funeral. He said, "Rest in paradise, my dear Jassy. Rest in peace, my dear child." Jassy's autopsy revealed that she lost her life through strangulation and blunt force trauma. But it gets worse. The forensic examiner also retrieved seminal fluid from her body, and of course, the DNA matched Louis Coleman. It doesn't get any sicker than this. Lois's DNA was also found under Jassy's nails. This meant she fought for her life, and for the chance to see her daughter again, to her very last breath. Louis Coleman was charged with kidnapping resulting in death. Much like first-degree murder, this charge can warrant the death penalty or a life without parole sentence. However, in November 2019, prosecutors announced they would not be seeking the death penalty for Coleman. During Louis's trial, mountains of evidence were presented to a court in tears. There were oodles of CCTV footage showing the exact timeline of events, from Louis luring Jassy to come with him outside venue, to the moment he dragged her lifeless body into his apartment. The prosecutors also showed Louis's internet searches during the days after he took Jassy's life. Here are some of his Google searches. Can a person fit in a suitcase? How to pull tooth out that is not loose. You would wonder what a defendant's team can say to make them look less guilty in a case like this. Louis Coleman's defense attorney tried saying that his Google searches were not relevant to the case, as the days following Jassy's death were not important. They also said that Louis was at the same nightclub as Jassy that night. He was seen chatting to another woman inside the club that night. The two talked, danced together, and exchanged phone numbers at the end. To the defense team, this meant that he was not interested in Jassy, not in that way. He only sought to defuse her fight with the Uber driver. In fact, the defense attorney went as far as painting Jassy as an aggressive woman who picked up a fight with the driver, making her look worse than Louis. But wait, if Louis wasn't interested in Jassy, why were his fluids all over her body? Sheesh. By painting her as a choleric person, Louis's defense team argued that Jassy started the fight inside the car that led to Louis accidentally taking her life in defense. In other words, her kidnapping and slaying weren't planned. He was just a good man taking a drunk girl home, and she started it all. Yeah, the jury saw right through that theory. If he was a good man caught in a terrible situation, why didn't he ring 911 that night and report what had happened? Why did he drag her into his apartment, pleasure himself over her, then spend the following days researching how to dispose of her body? Coleman was also 100 pounds heavier than Jassy, so a scenario where she attacked him so badly that he was scared for his life just wasn't plausible. In June 2022, Louis Coleman was found guilty of 1 count of kidnapping, resulting in death.
Jury has convicted a man in the deadly kidnapping of a young mother who was out celebrating her birthday.
Well, it has been a grueling 3 years, and it was a grueling 3 weeks of testimony for Jassy Correia's family, capped by an emotional outburst in court today when the guilty verdict was read. One family member yelling the word yes.
Louis Coleman will die in prison for unaliving Jassy Correia. Joaquin and Jassy's brother were over the moon. It was the only kind of justice they could get for Jassy, now that they couldn't get her back. Joaquin spoke at the sentencing.
I thank you all profoundly from my heart.
Não tem direito estar na sociedade.
He doesn't have the right to be in the society.
Life in prison. Life in prison. What do you think about that?
Well, that's gonna save a lot of women.
What words would you use to describe Louis Coleman today?
I'm not the type of person to judge people like that, say, but for me, he's a bad person.
Killer.
More than killer. What he did, it was disgusting.
He said he still felt deep sadness over his sister's death, no matter the outcome of the trial. A lifetime in prison for Jassy's killer cannot outdo what he did, or the life Jassy will never have. It's true. Many cases end with a guilty verdict and a lifelong sentence. But for the victim's family, the story is just beginning in a way. They have to work hard to grieve, forgive, and move on with their lives. No one's life can ever get back to the way it was after losing a loved one in such a brutal way. But knowing a monster will die behind bars is a reassuring thought. At least no more innocent people will lose their lives at his hands. Thanks for watching, y'all. What are your thoughts on this case, and do you know other similar stories? Let me know in a comment. And before you leave, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit that bell button. See you next time.